Following the 2024 national elections, the MKP emerged as the third largest party. Through the Government of National Unity arrangement, it became the official opposition in Parliament. Now, it's been a year of highs and lows, with internal dynamics at times threatening to derail the party. SABC politics editor Mzwandile Mbeje is live from Gandhi Square in Johannesburg with MKP Secretary-General Floyd Shivambu. Good afternoon, over to you.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Juliet, and indeed we are sitting with the Secretary-General of Mzwandile Party to reflect really on their role as the official opposition since the election. In fact, it's actually, the election was on the 29th of May last year. Today is the 28th, just a day before the actual day of the elections. And then, of course, you've correctly said there, the MK became the official opposition because of the arrangement in terms of the GNU. But without wasting a lot of time, I'm going to go right to the Secretary-General of MKP, Floyd Shivambu. Welcome, good to see you today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us, Mzwandile. The last time we spoke was in November 2024.
Oh, you're even recording when I spoke?
I've got a clear memory of everything else that we do.
Well, good. Well, last year, around this time, of course, you had totally different colors,
yes.
But I guess we're not there now because I think that has been explained in the past. So you're representing the Mzwandile Party, which is the official opposition in Parliament. So how would you fare your rating in Parliament as the official opposition?
Now look, the past 12 months since the last general elections in South Africa have been eventful 12 months. And Mzwandile has become the most important game changer and role player in South Africa's politics. A lot of things, of course, got to happen in terms of how government was constituted, and how Mzwandile got to position itself as an alternate voice to the current so-called government of national unity. I think by proper measure, our members of parliament and public representatives have done fairly well. Many people claim so many victories wrongly, but the presence of Mzwandile has got to change the politics of South Africa. There wouldn't have been a budget impasse in the manner that it is now if Mzwandile was not part of the voices that stood firmly against what a component of the so-called government of national unity was proposing. If Mzwandile was not founded, South Africa will be having 17% VAT today. But because of Mzwandile, because the ANC under Ramaphosa increased VAT before from 14% to 15%. Yes, there were political parties in parliament, but they didn't have any significance to could stop that. But Mzwandile, by its mere presence in South Africa's political landscape, effectively got to prevent an attempt to increase the value-added tax to 17%. So, fairly, our members of parliament, despite the fact that a substantial number of them didn't have any legislative or public representation experience, are doing fairly well in terms of what they are assigned to do. And there is a scope to could, of course, improve the manner in which our public representatives represent the people in a disciplined, decisive and clear way.
Yeah. I hear you saying your members have been quite doing well from what you are saying. But there's a view there that they are not as significant in terms of the voice as they should be, given the number you have. And in terms of leading the discussion as the official opposition, their voice is not really leading as expected. So why would you say they are at the forefront when the view seems to be a bit different, given that we see parties perhaps smaller than MKP doing that?
Now, look, if you were to pay closer attention to the substantial submissions made by our members of parliament in all the portfolio committees and standing committees of parliament, if you were to pay closer attention, you realize that there is a lot of work that is being done, and there's a lot of policy positions and propositions that we got from our representatives which get to be submitted in the standing committee on finance, in the defense portfolio committee, and a variety of other interventions as well as to just what should happen. And one other thing which South Africa should appreciate is that Mkhonto weSizwe is not the Democratic Alliance. Mkhonto weSizwe is not the Economic Freedom Fighters. Mkhonto weSizwe is its own party, does not play to the gallery for just attention of social media. We do our work and we know what really matters to the people. That is why even before the elections, a lot of people underrated or undermined the capacity that Mkhonto weSizwe has. A lot of people were shocked, including those who are leading other political parties, that Mkhonto weSizwe came to represent the true interest of our people. So it's so far so good, but there's a huge scope and space for improvement that can always be effected. Hence, this constant discussion and review of the work of our public representatives.
So is that the reason why the chief whip was perhaps removed yesterday?
No. So, you know, for an organization that is still at the formative stages, there will always be strategic and tactical considerations as to the composition of its leadership collective. And not because someone who is in a position is doing wrong or has done wrong. Sometimes there are strategic considerations that are made in terms of who should play which role. And the leadership collective came to a decision that we should assign Tsikani Colin Makhubele as the chief whip in the National Assembly to then work with our party leader, Dr. Mandlakaise Hlophe, to guide the entire caucus towards a different and much more impactful direction. And that does not reflect on anything wrong that was done by the former chief whip, Mzwandile. And even before him, there was a Commander Sihle Ngubane. He played his part, and then there was consideration that let's have Mzwandile as a chief whip. Now there is assigning of Colin Makhubele as the chief whip. It doesn't say that there is anything wrong that was done by either of those that were replaced.
I mean, I remember after the State of the Nation address, when the MKP had to respond, I think there was a lot of criticism in many quarters, and then it looked like it was an issue between the leader of the party in Parliament and the chief whip in terms of who contributed what. So did that have to do with perhaps this strategic arrangement?
No, it has got nothing to do with that. But also, one thing which as Secretary-General, as a disciplined member of Mkhonto weSizwe, I will never do is to speak about internal discussions of Mkhonto weSizwe which are not due for public communication. So I don't know about the so-called differences about the State of Nation address. And as far as we're concerned, there are critical issues which, in his response, the Deputy President of Mkhonto weSizwe, the party leader, raised. There's an issue which he raised about the Richards Bay minerals. Like there's a company there that has been exploiting our natural resources, made commitments with the communities of Richards Bay, and is not honoring those commitments, despite repeated commitments. And he raised that sharply. And he also raised sharply the counter-narrative against this illusion that President Zuma's term as head of state and president were 9 wasted years. He was able to systematically and systemically illustrate that President Zuma's contribution is objectively and qualitatively far much better than all other heads of state that ever got to occupy the position of president here in South Africa.
I think one of the things that the MK has been saying is to get black parties in the main to work together. But we are seeing a lot of perhaps disagreement from some of the people we think should be your natural key allies. For example, the economic freedom fighters. They've made it clear that, they don't see themselves working with you as the MK. Saying, I think your contribution basically as a party is quite insignificant.
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand the political and ideological position of the EFF currently, because the EFF is co-signatory of a charter which unites the Progressive Caucus in Parliament, which espouses common values and principles. But in some other articulations, I think there was a characterization of Mkhonto Wesizwe as enemy number one, and then I think their leader said in one of the platforms in the recent past that the MK is led by a stupid and the followers are stupid and everything else. But we have never got a substantial submission of what causes such a very sorry and unfortunate, unintelligent observation. What we know is that there is a common program which is contained in the Progressive Charter, which unites the Progressive Caucus in Parliament. And in our own internal discussions as Mkhonto Wesizwe, we took time to characterize all political formations in South Africa. And we then said our characterization of, for instance, the ANC is that despite it having been captured by the white capitalist establishment, it doesn't become an enemy force. It becomes a strategic opponent which is contested. That is our characterization of the ANC. And then we said the EFF is not even an opponent. We said it's a potential strategic ally, because it more or less espouses in its foundational documents and perspectives, it espouses more or less the same values that Mkhonto Wesizwe espouses. ATM is our strategic ally, and we then categorize the Democratic Alliance as part of the enemy camp. What maybe could help in terms of this politics of South Africa is that let's rise above subjectivity and deal with proper ideological and political characterizations of just what is the environment that we're in and how do we relate with the different political forces. But the childishness and subjectivity will undermine otherwise a necessary cause for the unification of all progressive forces, not just in Parliament, but on the ground. There's no need that if Mkhonto Wesizwe, EFF, ATM identify that their service delivery challenges in the municipalities of Alfred Nzo, of Matatiela, Mzwandile, Mandela municipality, we must then organize separate matches to deal with issues of service delivery. We must do that jointly to say that these are the issues that we are raising. And it's not about dissolution of any party, it's about unification of the strategic objectives of just that, what we seek to achieve collectively on behalf of the people of South Africa.
We are actually continuing with this discussion, but as you are aware, so we're on the life aspect, so we will continue with this discussion, but for the moment I'm just going to hand back to the studio so that we can be able to deal with other issues that affect the party and the country.